people on Facebook had their
Yes, it is. Good evening and welcome to the regular commission meeting for December 17th, 2024. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Now, if we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
City Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Toth is absent. Commissioner Craybill.
Here.
Commissioner Minning.
Here.
Vice Mayor Dickey.
Here.
Mayor Doctor.
Here. Moving on, approval of regular and workshop agendas. Do we have any changes? Okay, I do have one change for tonight. I would like to put on an item I-4. And item I-4 is for permitting subsequent to the hurricanes. Once again, does anybody, yeah, the actual title will be permitting subsequent to the hurricanes.
Is that not the topic of tomorrow night's town hall?
Well, the town hall is a little bit different. We're going to be, since we are putting it under an agenda item, we are going to be taking a vote tonight
On
this, just this, the permitting subsequent to the hurricanes.
what specifically are we going to be voting on?
Specifically, we're going to be talking about something that we've pretty much already done before, which is the option 2. But the option 2 is not placed, when we did not take a vote on option 2. We basically had, it was a workshop, and we basically just ran with the consensus. And on this, we're going to actually take a vote tonight on this item. So we'll get to the more detail at the end of the evening. All right. No.
Wait a minute. Did you just unilaterally interject that?
Yes.
On what basis?
On the basis that any commissioner can unilaterally add anything to the agenda.
Okay.
The only thing I'd like to add to that is anytime there's something on the agenda, I'd like to
Yeah.
have some time to
Amen.
review it,
Yeah,
spend some
that's-
time analyzing it, gather my thoughts, get other people's opinion on it. And adding it on at this last minute doesn't allow us to do that.
Amen.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
No proclamations, recognitions, certificates of appreciation. Public comments for non-agenda items. Corey Evans.
Well, I think the main thing that I want to just mention is our frustration that we can't get the documents we need. I really would like clarification because I've been coming to these meetings and I think I heard that you guys agreed on item 2, which would mean they don't have to have a permit to get started. I'd like clarification of that. But also, the main thing is just, I talked to Chuck earlier, and he said they're trying to hire a bunch more people to do the permits. But we really, it's so frustrating that we can't get our documents of substantial damage or our permits. And we need to do something to make that better.
Thank you, Corey. Brandy Long.
Hi, thank you for taking my comment. 11 days ago at the last meeting, I asked every commissioner and mayor if they would participate in a town hall style meeting, allowing dialogue and human conversation with our community. They all agreed and additionally recommended that the city staff, including the city manager and city attorney, be present to field questions. Friday afternoon, we were told yes, that we will have a town hall meeting, but the residents cannot speak. You must submit your questions in advance and there will be no public comment. Today, just hours ago, an update was included with the announcement stating that questions would be allowed. The link included in the updated announcement said, "A few additional questions will be allowed from the audience in attendance." I'm concerned that my voice is not being heard. My efforts are not being valued, and we have been misinformed. We need to know whether the commissioners and the mayor support the decisions made by the city staff. We also need to know if the city staff/decision makers have made decisions that benefit their own roles and possibly their own future investments. As we strive for transparency, I'd like to ensure that my questions are on record and answered tomorrow night, as the community's voice is crucial. I will be emailing them also as directed by the public announcement said to email them, so I'll do that. My questions are as follows. Who made the initial decision to proceed with option 1? Were all the commissioners and mayor educated on the specifics and details of option 1 and 2 prior to option 1 being chosen? During the special meeting, November 1st at 9 a.m., the commission and mayor voiced their preference to move forward with option 2. Why was there not a formal vote? Why didn't the city attorney advise the commission and mayor on the next steps for a formal vote for option 2 during the November 1st special meeting? When the first batch of substantial letters were sent out, why did they not have a percentage listed if the amount was over 50%? Why did the city not use the provided actual cash value figure on the detailed reports? Why did the city instead use the much lower Pinellas County property appraiser value? Whether our residents' properties are under 50% or over 50%, why are the residents not given that detailed report? Those are my questions, and I hope that they're answered tomorrow and they aren't put in a research pile. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Hoey. Oh, sorry, I had my mic down.
Good evening, Mark Hoey, 225 104th Avenue, District 3. A couple of weeks ago, we had some discussion and back and forth about the substantial damage evaluator, the 5-page report that contains many data points that are behind the scenes of what is now a 2-page letter going out to homeowners, giving them either the good news or the bad news about the percent of damage of their property. Interestingly enough, looking at that, and I made comment to that some of the data appears in error. And basically what it appears is that we are understating property values, overstating the necessary repair values. The result being, you put that together and the percentage is increased beyond what it commonly would make sense and pushing people over the 50%. Interestingly enough, the FEMA in their publication 213 clearly states that it's the responsibility of the community to review and ensure that the data that's being pulled from the county with regards to market value has been, as necessary, factored to represent current legitimate property values. Now, can't say that that's being done. We don't see anything behind this data. But now letters are going out to the community, and quite a few of them, just from contacts and otherwise, are substantially over the 50% in properties that literally did not appear to have that level of damage. And I think part of the challenge there is, where's the data coming from? We're making decisions and people's lives are being disrupted based on the data that's coming from somewhere. So then, even this is such a moving target now, that now the word is that FEMA may have determined that the database or software data that has been used for that evaluator tool may be flawed. It may not represent the Florida coastal environment with regards to building type, property type, et cetera. I can't substantiate that yet, but I would be very interested in our team here checking that out, because if so, that would explain why the understated property value, overstated repair values, that's creating so many homes that are substantially damaged in the eyes of the FEMA records. So I would encourage the group to take a hard look at that. We can't go back. We can go back, and I think that's what would have to happen. I mean, we're 10 weeks in. It seems like that would be a do-over, but I think it would be appropriate if that's where we're headed and that FEMA indeed has better or more appropriate software for their evaluator that represents our area, that we do that as quickly as we can so that we can stop sending out SDAs that are in error. And you think about it, just across from my little old view on 104th, the third home is being torn down. Yeah. Third home, and then there's one on the other side, Bob, so it's really four. How, people are making the decision. How many are making that decision based on the SDA they got and the fact that they think that it's lost, that they're going to have to move on or rebuild or do something? We can't let that happen to the whole community. Indeed, if it is in error, that will be a really ugly environment. So appreciate your help digging into that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. West Evans.
West Evans, Isle of Palms. I stand before you today, the brother of Charles Edward Evans, disabled Iraq veteran, 3rd Infantry Division, United States Army, the son of James Edward Evans, disabled veteran, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, 3rd Infantry Division, United States Army, the grandson of Charles Edward Evans, Italy, World War II, United States Army, the great-grandson of Thomas Edward Evans, World War I, United States Army. Yes, here I stand, a citizen of the greatest country man has ever known, fought for and defended by the greatest men that God ever created. My feet planted on the soil of the greatest state in the Union, wondering what happened to our once great city. I'm now begging a bureaucracy to give me permission to live in my own home, begging unelected pencil pushers to give me permission to make repairs to what's rightfully mine. Is this what we've become? Just 1 and 2 generations removed from men who left school at 15 years old to fight for God and country. Now we beg at the feet of faceless bureaucrats for permission to make our lives whole again. On October 28th, 1 month after the storms devastated our island and 1 month into the bad post-storm policy, our former mayor tucked his tail and finally skipped town. On October 29th, we welcomed Mayor John Doctor. Unfortunately, his immediate call to action was met with immediate resistance from the city attorney, city manager, and even his fellow commissioners. Time after time, the mayor has called for permits to be issued and to get people back in their homes, only to be met with red tape, unnecessary affidavits, and doublespeak and manipulation from the city attorney and city manager. Any roadblock this city can find, they willingly lay it in front of our residents. Every commissioner or staff member I've spoken to about why this keeps happening gives me the same response of, but everyone is working so hard. The mayor seems to be the only one who keeps asking, then why isn't it getting done? The only man I see in this building that consistently stand with the residents and tries to get us back in our homes is Mayor John Doctor at this point. What's going on with everyone else? On November 11th, Isle of Palms turned out overwhelmingly in support of Chris Clark to District 2 Commissioner. The only person to listen to the residents and vote for Chris Clark was Mayor John Doctor. Arden Dickey, in a move to block the mayor from doing what the residents wanted, you made a motion for an emergency meeting. Bob Minning, you seconded that motion. A roadblock was in place. No discussion could be had. Then lo and behold, Commissioner Deb Toth comes blazing in the chamber like a bat out of hell to finalize a vote against what the residents wanted, but not before having the city manager read a nasty letter she penned against the appointment of Mr. Clark. And what did we get out of this? Diana Craybill now sits in the chair for District 2. And her first order of business, a vote yes on fill dirt mandate, which essentially raises the cost of elevating your home by upwards of $200,000. And who sided with the residents who didn't want the mandate? Mayor John Doctor. Why do I only ever see one man consistently standing up for the residents and trying to do what's right in this building? So I ask you, commissioners, and I ask you, staff, as a brother of Edward, the son of Edward, the grandson of Edward, and the great-grandson of the Edward who came before him, why are you not driven by the ghosts of those who came before you to do the right thing? What drives you to grovel at the feet of some local self-appointed kingmaker? Why are you not driven to be strong, to stand up for what's right, to stand with your neighbors? Why are you not driven, like the mayor, like the residents, like those of us who sit before you today, to return this island to greatness? Thank you.
Thank you, Wes. Carrie Auerbach?
That's tough to follow, really tough. Hi, I'm Carrie Auerbach, Treasure Island Adopt a Beach. I'm changing the subject because this is what I do, and I don't live on this island, and I'm sorry for what everyone's going through. It's very emotional. I'm speaking tonight to three things. A reminder that Treasure Island is the first beach community to enforce ordinances already on the books. Thank you, Jennifer. To make personal fireworks illegal on public beaches and properties. We're trying to avoid any more debris, so if you're thinking of setting off fireworks on New Year's Eve or any time, please do so on your own property. The police and fire departments will be out there to kindly remind you of the laws. Number 2, New Year's Day, there will be a beach cleanup at Gulffront Park starting at 8:30 a.m. for those of us who decided to sleep instead of staying up for the midnight city-sponsored fireworks. All supplies and parking is free. This Saturday, Treasure Island Adopt a Beach is hosting a special cleanup event right across the street here at Community Park from 10 to 12, 10 a.m. till noon. We'll be gathering with supplied buckets and pickers, gloves, to clean up the thousands of pieces of small debris that's left behind. After walking through the park, it truly feels like a graveyard, and in a sense it is. This is where your belongings were piled before they were redistributed. What's left must be cleaned up so we can transform the park into something even more beautiful than it was. Keep Pinellas beautiful, Treasure Island Adopt a Beach, and Run for the Beaches will be partnering with the city's sustainability and parks and recreation departments to help beautify the area. Our visions are many. Some include planting butterfly gardens and other native plants and creating a memorial to honor the resilience of this community in the wake of the hurricanes. I know many of you have other priorities, and I truly appreciate you making the effort. Even if you can only spare 10 minutes, please come out and grab a bucket and a picker. If you have your own, please bring it. Also, no worries about parking. The city is not yet charging for parking. Let's let this time be a time to gather together and do some good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carrie. Chris Clark?
I'm actually glad I'm Chris Clark, District 2. I'm actually glad I'm 2 behind Wes. Man, that was a lot to follow. So I am here tonight to talk about the fill dirt mandate. I couldn't make the meetings. I was out of town when that was discussed. But I guess I think we might have missed some folks, and those are folks that want to lift their homes, because I think this really throws a wrench into those people's plans. I may be wrong, and maybe I need to ask this tomorrow night when we can get answers, but I think there's a whole bunch of questions around, what this does to people that want to lift when we mandate this. Because And looking at this, to me, it just kind of seems like, I thought we were done talking about Elevate TI, but this seems like Elevate TI Light. I mean, it's just basically the train modification manual without the look back. So I did not realize until I went around talking to neighbors how many people were either already signed a contract to lift their home or at least gotten a proposal to do it. And, you know, from what I've seen, this becomes, if this gets mandated, it becomes a game changer for those folks. I personally got a proposal to have my house lifted. It was $472,000, which that's a lot of money. But hey, if you never have to worry about getting flooded again, you know, maybe not. But I called those folks back, provided the train modification manual for them to look at. The quote I got back now is $733,000 to do everything that needs to be done to make my property the way that it needs to be once it's lifted. So I'm not too proud to admit that a couple, you know, $300,000 extra is a lot of money to me, and it's probably not something that we're going to look at anymore. And to me, you have to look at the people that want to lift their homes. I mean, there are people that probably don't have the funds to tear their house down and then build a whole new one. They just don't have the funds for that. Or they're later in life, don't want to take out a big mortgage. So I think, you know, many have signed contracts, and I'm trying to look out for the residents. I've gone around to as many as I can to say, hey, you need to understand what's happening. Talk to the folks you got a quote from. And if you also signed a contract, you know, find out what this is going to do to your cost. Because, you know, what I've seen, it's going to raise the cost a bunch. And maybe what I should do is ask these questions tomorrow night when you guys can answer and get some answers on, you know, does the entire property have to be lifted? Does the whole terrain modification manual have to be followed if you're going to lift or not? Because from right now, it seems like this is basically going to be a game changer for anyone that wants to lift their home. And I think I talked to probably maybe 15 people that had already signed contracts and probably another 30 that had gotten quotes. So, and some of those people are in the room, and I think they don't know what to do now because they don't understand how this is going to affect lifting their home. And, you know, Commissioner Minning, I agree with two things you said when this came up the other night, and correct me if I'm misquoting you, but the one thing you said was if supposedly 80% of the 90% of the people that are going to tear their home down are going to do this anyway, then why does it need to be mandated? Because we're just then locking out the people that want to lift their home, right? And the other thing you said was, you know, why does it have to be done tomorrow? I mean, by the time these houses are torn down and you got the permits ready to build them up, I know we could have a simple fill dirt ordinance. It's not going to take a year. I know we could have a simple fill dirt ordinance in. So I don't understand what the rush is. I mean, we still can't get permits to put up drywall. How are you going to get permits to build a whole nother house? I mean, by the time it comes around, timing should not be an issue. And let me just give you an example of a real life example of some neighbors that live 4 doors down from me. They've lived here forever. They can't get permits. They just got totally disillusioned. They keep getting, their contractor they went through 2 contractors. They're like, you know, Chris, we're going to move. I'm like, why don't you look into lifting? Your house is like the perfect house for it. So they went to go lift, get a quote. They're all excited about it. They find out about the mandate. It just pushed them over the edge. They're like, we're selling our home. So now, in 2 weeks' time, they basically gave their home away. And what's going to happen? The person that's moving in was probably someone that couldn't afford to buy the house before, but they're giving it away now. So they come in, they're buying it, and they're going to put the house back. So now we have a house that could have been lifted by folks that had lived here for a long time, that now is going to have someone new move in, fix it up, and be done. And so we gained absolutely nothing as far as I'm concerned. So every resident I talk to is against this, and I guess it kind of seems like par for the course lately that because the residents are against it, the majority of you guys, I think in the meeting that one day, you know, talked like you were going to vote for it. So it's just sad for people that are actually trying to do what you guys want. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Moving on to commission reports. Commissioner Crable.
Okay. I too, when I was out talking to residents and stuff, I am listening to you. Matter of fact, before Wes spoke, before Chris spoke, I had a prepared statement for what I had written for tonight on things. Residents are wanting to elevate and lift houses to become FEMA compliant, but the possibility for mandated fill costing $10 or hundreds of thousands of dollars to accomplish this is putting great stress on them. I told the people that I would ask the commission to defer any more movement on this until we get out of this crisis mode so we can all think clearer. What would our repercussions be if we did not make mandatory fill for current buildings to be raised? If we mandate fill for lifting the house, we will lose families and elderly by driving them away due to the additional cost. I do not want that for anybody, and especially if owners are lifting their houses when they're under the FEMA 50% rule, which is some of the cases also. I know in the workshop I voted for the fill, and that had a mandatory requirement, but I am listening to you. And when I had my meeting with the city manager, I asked him if there was a way that we could possibly work around this so that we can grandfather or something so that we can protect our residents here. I don't want to put that extra burden on there. I want families to be able to stay. I don't want our people, our elderly people, to think that they have to choose between their home or nursing home care later on and stuff. So I am listening, and I'm not saying I made the best vote because of not thinking so much about people that are trying to elevate existing homes. A lot of that was addressed in prior things in P&Z that was for a lot of new builds, and that makes a big difference versus somebody's home that they're actually living in. Another thing that I had found out being out in the community was that I had a couple of people ask me about laundry facilities, and they were questioning why we didn't have laundry facilities on Treasure Island, because they still had them in Mad Beach. I went to the city manager and I asked about that at our meeting, and he said there was very little demand for it, and that's why we got rid of them to start out with. So I am trying to get answers, and I'm not saying that I make every perfect decision on the first time, but I am here and I am listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob?
Well, where do I start, I guess is the main question. There were a number of comments this evening that were directed at individuals up here and staff as well. I take those to heart, and I am in 180 degrees in disagreement with some of those comments. And so I would ask those folks who made those comments and accusation maybe to do a little fact-finding and see exactly who voted how and when and for what. Second thing is, I would ask the city manager and city attorney right now, as the commission has opined, is there a fill mandate for raising your house and or new construction?
Under the existing ordinances, no.
Yeah. Okay. So if a person wanted to raise their house today and contracted with a company that does that, there would be no mandate, no requirement from the city to bring in fill dirt to do that.
Correct. As the ordinances stand now, there is no mandate.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Commissioner Arden Dickey?
Thank you. I had some prepared comments, but none were to address some of these issues. But let me go ahead and touch on a couple of them. One was we talked about substantially damaged letters going out. Those I have volunteered to work with residents who have gotten those letters. And when they come in on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I sit down with them along with some of the other volunteers, but specifically I've asked to deal with that. And my primary purpose is to help them stay in their home if that's what they want. And so I give them advice, I give them counsel, I let them know everything they possibly can do to appeal the substantial damage determination and to stay in their home. And as of this afternoon, I don't think I've sat with anyone who is at risk of having to abandon their house because of the 50% rule. That doesn't mean they're not out there. It just means I haven't spoken with them specifically. So anyway, we are trying. The city, there's this gross misperception that the city wants people to be evicted from their house or to abandon their house or to sell it at a very heavy discount and leave it so that somebody can come in and tear it down and build a monstrosity that we can get more taxes on. That is absolutely ridiculous to even think that way. So the city I'm trying to do everything I can to help people stay in their homes, and that's what I will continue to try to do. Regarding the comment about lifting their homes, I have asked also, well before this meeting, I've asked if we could grandfather in homes that were destroyed or hurt during the hurricane, and that people wanted to lift their house so that there would be no mandate requirement. And I've thrown out a number, or not a number, but a period of maybe for the next 2 or 3 years, realizing not everybody wants to make the decisions now in terms of whether they're going to lift their house or tear it down, but to give them a period of time before to allow them to bring fill in if they want, and if they didn't want to, they didn't have to. So I think we're all pretty much in sync with what you guys are suggesting in terms of applying some reasonability and some logic to having a fill policy that's mandated, even if we go down that path. So, I'm not sure how the zoning and planning or the local planning agency was going to view this when they look at it, but I am hoping that it comes to us with some kind of provision that allows a period of time for people, whether it be 2 years or whatever, that current residents who want to elevate their houses or tear down and build new ones would be allowed to do so and to act in a voluntary mode in terms of whether or not they want to bring in fill dirt. So those are the two things that I wanted to address on that. I do have one other unrelated thing, and that's a more recent problem that we're starting to see now, in particular on Sunset Beach, but I imagine it's going to be everywhere, is I got a call from and emails and texts from several residents regarding their Pinellas County utilities bill. Specifically, they're saying, wait a minute, I haven't been in my house since September 26th. How come I'm getting a $400 bill for these things? And on that bill, as most of you well know, are your sewer charges from the city of Treasure Island, your trash removal, and there's one other thing on there, reclaimed water, I think. Oh, no, that's by Pinellas County Utilities. But anyway, I think we need to, as a commission and as city staff, to take a look at what we can do for those people who are not in their homes to continue to have to pay for trash removal and other services that they're not getting when they're not living in their homes. So if we can take a look at that, I'd appreciate it. Those are my comments.
Great, thank you. As we're talking about the fill dirt, Bob and I are against fill dirt. We've been against the mandate on fill dirt. I don't care if they call it a requirement or a guideline that's required to be filled, whatever it is, we were there. But one of the things we had last week was we had Kimley Horn. And I asked the gentleman, and it wasn't his realm, but he said that they could take a look at something. And I asked him also, could they expedite it if that's possible because of the 2 storms that we've had here? Could we get it expedited and not to have it be 8 or 12 months and to have it be 8 weeks? So I'm asking Chuck, city manager, have we done anything, any conversation with Kimley Horn? Horn. Is there anything that they're looking at actively today that, because I know that Commissioner Minning basically said, yeah, could you do that for us? And can you look it up for us?
Actively, no, but we're working to find the right contact within Kimley Horn so that they can take a look at that to see how we could get a fill dirt ordinance to see if there's a way to accelerate for that to happen.
Okay. And I understand, the real priority here is permits. We get that, but we can do more than one thing at a time, I assume, and so, okay, that's, I appreciate that. Brandy, you had asked about the town hall and who called it, and the 5 commissioners called it. So it is the commission's town hall meeting. We will be in the front of the room tomorrow night upstairs, and so that we're basically like we will be now. You're looking at us, we're looking at you, and we're hearing what you're saying. So. Is everyone going to be present, including the city staff? Yes, the city staff will be here and everything else. Yep. So, and there's a lot of good questions that came up from all of you, from West and from Chris and yourself. And tomorrow night, a lot of those will be answered. And yes, I'm hearing a lot of the same things that the other people are, especially I heard today that the county said they weren't sure and how much confidence they had in the data that they had. And so, because we got a lot of block houses where in New Orleans it was a lot of wood structures and different things. So it is night and day. So, but we'll hear a lot of that tomorrow. The assistant appraiser for the county is going to be here tomorrow as well. We would have had the appraiser, but he's already doing another one. But his assistant is going to be coming and talking about the appraisals and what's on their books and everything else. And he'll be able to answer questions as well. We do have a couple of guests that potentially are coming to speak as well. We've heard from some of the officials that maybe their aides would be able to be here tomorrow night, and that's Luna. Paulina Luna. Her aide was looking at coming possibly, and same with Senator DeSaglia. His aide may be there, and maybe he'll be there as well. So we're going to have the right people. I think we're going to have the right answers. We're going from 5:30 to 7:30. But yes, this is going to be the commission's town hall meeting, and which does mean that I plan to engage with you and hear what you're asking and giving answers and everything else. So I think that hopefully that covers most everything on the permits. And tomorrow night will be a much better time spent tomorrow than tonight. So, okay, thank you. All right, we're moving on to approval of the minutes. Do we have any minutes?
No.
No. Okay, thank you. Moving on then to consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I don't think we have anything for the consent agenda.
There is no.
Yeah,
Oh, we've got 2 items.
there were 2 items.
We're not going to talk about those, or we're just going to go ahead and vote for them?
Well, what we do is we give a motion.
Yeah.
We get a second, and then we have the
Okay.
discussion.
All right. Regarding the first thing on the agenda, H1, I move the city. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think it's probably easier. We can just say, I move to adopt the consent agenda for this evening.
Sure, if we're not going to be doing anything to talk about, I'm fine with that. I move that we adopt both H1 and H2 on tonight's consent agenda.
Great, thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any public comment? Okay, hearing none. Do we have any discussion here?
All good.
Okay, so if we do have the roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Dickey,
Aye.
Commissioner Minning,
Aye.
Commissioner Craybill,
Aye.
Mayor Doctor.
Aye. It's a majority vote, motion carries. All right, let's move on to items of business. The I-1, the second reading and final public hearing of ordinance 2024-26.
Ordinance 2024-26, an ordinance of the City of Treasure Island, Florida, amending Chapter 50, Traffic and Vehicles of the City of Treasure Island Code of Ordinances by revising Section 50-1 definitions to include definitions of existing violations and of a new violation created by this ordinance, and redefining holiday and public parking, creating Section 50-7, unlawful parking generally, to clarify existing parking violations and to create new parking violations, revising Section 50-14, illegal parking fines, to incorporate statutory limitations on parking fines and the violations being created or revised by this ordinance, providing for conflict, providing for codification, providing for an effective date.
Thank you very much. Are there any changes? Do we have, first of all, do we have staff that's coming up and talking to us? Because I do have a couple of questions about the financial analysis.
Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Mike Howard. I am a consultant filling in for on an interim basis for the finance director here at Treasure Island. Happy to answer any questions you may have about the financials.
Okay, the first thing would be, are there any changes from the first reading?
No.
Okay. Then the second would be the analytics. We were talking about that we had some of the fines that were like at $80 or $60 coming down to $30.
Right,
and what did it see, how that played in the mix?
Yeah, and the punchline to the whole thing is it's about a $25,000 reduction in revenues over a year.
Okay.
So, you know, and it's statute, you know, it's law anyway, but financially it's pretty negligible, I think.
Okay. Thank you.
We've included the analysis within your packet.
Okay. All right. Any public comment? All right. Hearing none. The public hearing portion is now closed. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve ordinance 2024-26, amending Chapter 50, Traffic and Vehicles of the City of Treasure Island Code of Ordinance as presented at the second and final public hearing.
Second.
Discussion for the
None.
commission?
I do have a couple of items. At the last meeting, and I think Chief Barkley addressed these issues, but I was concerned about rolling back the prices of parking fines from $80 to $30 for what I thought were some pretty serious parking violations, including blocking driveways, blocking fire lanes, and parking on sidewalks. And I thought having a $30 fine wasn't a significant enough deterrent to keep people from parking in front of somebody's driveway or in front of on their sidewalk on West Gulf Boulevard and Sunset Beach. But I did ask at that time, and the city attorney has provided me the documentation which clearly from the state, which clearly states the city cannot charge anything more than $30 for non-moving violations. So the reason was given at that time, and I sought and got clarification that the state just doesn't allow you to charge that. Anybody wanted to fight it in court would win. They would be thrown out because we were charging more than that. Having said that, you know, I'm still concerned about people parking and blocking driveways and parking on the sidewalk out here on Gulf Boulevard to go to the beach and parking in fire lanes. And the chief did say that he would be, they would be towing vehicles away, that if they were blocking somebody's driveway or a sidewalk or something like that. As I understand, there's also an ordinance that the state of Florida allows you to ticket somebody every 2 hours for non-moving violations. So I know you can do that with overtime parking, but I think you can do it also with these other kind of parking violations. So to the extent that, you know, it's not bad enough to be towed, but it still is, you know, is not what the city had intended when it passed this ordinance, I would encourage the chief and the the police to exercise that option to ticket the vehicle if they haven't moved, in a 2-hour period. The other thing, and this is more just a side note, and this certainly isn't going to affect the way I vote on this or anything, but backing in, the new ordinance included a fine, a violation for backing into a parking space. And I noticed when I pulled up tonight that there were about half the vehicles, including my own, that backed into the parking space tonight. So that's going to be a difficult transition at best to get people to, and I understand why we have it. I just know it's going to be a challenge. That's all the comments I had about that, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Why is it wrong?
I'm sorry that, go ahead. Go ahead and answer.
The backing into it is the new equipment we have for monitoring whether or not somebody paid for parking. It identifies their license plate, and if somebody's backed into it, it would require the parking enforcer to have to get out at every one of those and check a license plate, as opposed to just keep driving down and being more efficient. So that's why the change in that ordinance.
All right. Finish up on the discussion. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Dickey?
Aye.
Commissioner Minning?
Aye.
Commissioner Craybill?
Aye.
Mayor Doctor?
Aye. Majority vote, motion carries. All right, moving on. First reading of the ordinance 2024-27, amending Chapter 68.
Ordinance 2427, an ordinance of the City of Treasure Island, Florida, amending Chapter 68 zoning regulations of the City of Treasure Island Code of Ordinances by amending Section 68-460 minimum yard regulations for accessory structures to rename that section minimum yard regulations for accessory structures and accessory equipment, and by adding language to recognize the excuse me, the elevation requirements for equipment in the current Florida Building Code and the city's Chapter 66, amending Section 68-482, accessory uses generally, to add a time-limited exception to allow docks, lifts, pools, and pool equipment to remain on site without a principal use under specific conditions, amending Section 68-512, regulation to clarify that when non-conforming residential or hotel-motel structures are allowed to repair or reconstruct to reflect that either the number of units or square footage that existed on September 19th, 1995, or the current density or square footage is allowed, whichever is greater. Adding Section 68-542, relief from setback requirements for existing structures being elevated or new meters on existing structures to be elevated to meet the code and the Florida Building Code as a minimal encroachment into the setbacks, providing for severability, providing for conflict, providing for codification, and providing for an effective date.
All right. Staff presentation, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. In response to the extreme damage caused to structures in the city in the wake of the 3 hurricanes in 2024, 2 of which were major hurricanes, which damaged the majority of structures in the city of Treasure Island, staff has recommended the changes outlined below to enhance the ability to reconstruct or elevate structures while providing certainty to the applicants as to what our code would be. This ordinance was reviewed on November 21st by the LPA and was, the board voted to approve the resolution, but there was a problem with the ordinance number, so this is coming to you today. It's going back to the LPA on Thursday, just so they can vote again, tie this back up with the bow, and this will come back to you for second reading at your first meeting in January, once we know what that date is. I know tonight you're setting the commission schedule for next year. There are no changes to the ordinance since the LPA reviewed it in November. And the policy purpose is to align the land development regulations with the Florida Building Code and the city floodplain regulations, and to provide relief to property owners in the post-storm reconstruction environment. So there are 4 sections of the code that have been recommended for change. The first is the minimum yard regulations for accessory structures. Basically, what that deals with is mechanical equipment. And in order to be able to elevate mechanical equipment, there are going to be some difficulties for the property owners in that typically that was on grade. And when you're replacing it now post-storm, it'll have to be elevated, meaning it's either on a stand on the building, it's on the roof, or it could be on a standalone stand, but depending on the house itself or the commercial building. So in that case, this is providing, normally that equipment would have to be at least 3 feet from the property line. This would provide relief if needed, if required only by the Florida Building Code, that it could be closer to the property line. This next section is accessory uses generally. That has to do with docks and pools. So normally when somebody is going to demolish a structure and there's a pool or a dock, we want to ensure that the pool or dock, which are considered accessory uses to the primary use, don't remain by themselves. So we've had instances in the past where people have left a pool behind after demo. It's become a nuisance. It's become a code case ongoing and those kind of things. So we wanted to allow people to go ahead and demo if they've got very damaged structures without a new permit in yet, and yet keep their pool, keep their dock, and be able to assure the surrounding citizenry that is still safe. So this basically says you can keep those structures for up to 2 years as long as you fence them off and keep them safe. And basically that's a Florida Building Code requirement that pools have to have a child safety fence. So we're just extending that to the waterfront to make sure that it's safe. So that's giving relief to the owners of the property in not having to wait to demo to have a rebuild permit first. The next section is clarifying the language regarding non-conforming structures. So we have non-conforming residential and hotel-motel density and square footage for structures which are specifically damaged by a natural disaster. What that means is, say, a typical hotel may have more units today than it would be allowed under the current code. This allows that hotel, if they rebuild, to keep the number of units or the square footage that they had in 1995. I'm not quite sure why 1995 was established as the year. That's when we had a major rewrite of our code, and it seems that a lot of changes go back to 1995, but I don't really see that it was different before 95. This provision in our code already exists, allowing them to keep the density and the square footage, or for a house to keep, say, it doesn't meet the setbacks. For a residential structure, it wouldn't be the density question, it would more likely be the footprint question. And so the house may not meet all the setbacks all the way around. We have a lot of older structures in the city that don't. But if it was a duplex, it would keep its duplex units, even though today maybe it could only be a single family. So this is a special provision in our code that already exists for hotel, motel, and residential structures. So what we're proposing to change there is to say, if the current code allowed you more square footage, or more height, or more units, you could use whichever is most favorable to you in combination. So that's the purpose of that section of the ordinance. The last section is a new section proposed to add, hold on one second, lost my page. Okay, for stairs and meter platforms. So when we're elevating a house, this is a new section 68542 that would allow you to have your stairs or your meter platform in the setbacks if there's no other option when you're elevating your structure. So that gives a allowable encroachment for those stairs or for that meter platform stair. As minimal as possible to meet the building code, but enough to get you into your house or commercial structure. The other one is for when you are elevating a structure, once again, to have that meter platform be in the setbacks. So those are the provisions that staff has outlined in this ordinance.
Any questions?
Well done.
I think that this is necessary, especially if we want people to raise the building. It almost is, it goes right with it. So, all right. Any public comment? Chris?
Evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Chris Downing, resident of Isle of Palms and member of the LPA and also the Zoning Board. I just wanted to make one clarification from Catherine's presentation tonight. She mentioned that all mechanical equipment or HVAC equipment would have to be raised elevation-wise if it's being replaced or repaired as a part of flood damage. I don't believe the interpretation of that is actually correct at this point in the way the city is handling it. And I actually have a meeting with Catherine this coming Thursday regarding this. But I've done a bit of research on both at the state level and the county level, and the way in which the Florida code is set up, there's an existing building code and a residential building code. And these play together, and I won't get into the complexity of that, but there is a statement in the residential code saying that all flood damage HVAC equipment shall be raised to the flood level. However, that conflicts with the existing building code that says any kind of repairs, anytime someone goes in for a repair permit, that the guidelines of that Florida existing building code supersede. So the upshot of that is all of us that have, excuse me, there's a bug up here. The upshot is that all of us that have single-family homes that are one story that are going to be repaired, it would fall under that part of the code, and it wouldn't be necessary to, if as a part of that your HVAC system was damaged and you had to replace it, that you would have to then elevate it, in many cases, above the top of the roof. That was going to enter into many more problems, not just setback, but also just the fact that it'll be less safe than it was before in terms of it being wind damage, but also, the requirements for that structure. And there's a lot of unknowns that are going to happen even with us taking and elevating homes and allowing this platform to go on the side. That's going to have to be properly engineered and not just blindly signed off by the building official to put up a structure. So I'm saying all that it was one small correction, but this issue of elevating HVAC systems when you're repairing for flood damage and you're not substantially damaged, the way the code should be interpreted, and I think we'll have the city interpret it correctly soon, is that you don't have to make it any less non-conforming than it is currently. I've spoken to the head mechanical code person at the state. He agrees with my interpretation. Pinellas County head mechanical person, a guy named Andrew DeVoe, I'm not going to get his last name correct. He also, Devereaux, thank you. He is also currently writing a memo to rescind what Pinellas County was originally saying about raising the HVAC systems for non-substantially damaged homes. Pasco County has already done an administrative decision and published it that is allowing homes that have not been substantially damaged to keep that HVAC system or other mechanical equipment at the level it is today, or not to make it any less conforming. They do allow you to raise it if somebody wants to raise it up 2 feet, more power to them. But like many of these things that were coming before us, we need to make it voluntary. And last comment, that's my position on Phil as well, to make it voluntary, not mandatory. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. All right, do we have any discussion, questions?
Question. What was just stated was there's a meeting with Catherine this Thursday, and could that result in a change to the ordinance?
So the ordinance is written as required by the Florida Building Code. Right now, our building official's interpretation and the notice that was provided by Pinellas County to all of the municipalities, as well as 10,000 contractors, was that this has to be done There is a lot of discussion about it right now, about how this code is interpreted. We're doing some research right now. Chris has provided us with Devereaux's contact information. We've reached out to him twice with no response, but we are working on that. This is a big subject all over Florida, every building official, every county, everything. But the language of the code says, replacement of exterior equipment and exterior appliances damaged by flood shall meet the requirement of this section. And it says if replaced, as part of a substantial improvement, electrical equipment and components, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and plumbing appliances and plumbing fixtures, duct systems, and other service equipment shall meet the requirements of this section. But as a person who's worked in architecture for many years, I can tell you interpreting the building code is very difficult because it's a cyclical argument. And so there is many, many ways to interpret the code. We're trying to make sure that we're interpreting it correctly. And that call is that of the building official. And the appeal of the city's decision would go to the Pinellas County Construction Licensing Board, which is who provided the guidance to begin with. So this is a complicated question. We don't have an answer, but it would not change the ordinance because the ordinance says if required by the Florida Building Code. So if not, then you don't need the relaxation that's in the zoning code.
Thank you.
Well, then I have a question. If that's the Florida Building Code and we're talking about Pinellas County having another interpretation on it, we still have a bit of a conflict going on possibly. And I hate for us to have to go forward on something when we have any major conflict. And that sounds like that's a major conflict.
Well, this ordinance is allowing zoning to make an exception if building code requires it. So whether the building code is interpreted this way or that way, this is just allowing a zoning relaxation without a variance, I guess is how I would say it. It's allowing something to happen if needed.
Okay, but when we're saying building code, and I know I'm splitting hairs, but this is where what we're kind of coming down. Florida versus Pinellas. I mean, which one are we actually talking? Florida, or with Pinellas taking another one, we still fall out underneath Pinellas also. So I'm just concerned about the hierarchy and the conflict, because I know in the LDRs we've had problems because we had conflicting information. Our rules, and I just don't want to add to it.
I don't believe this ordinance does that. I believe this ordinance is just saying if the building code requires it, then you can do this in zoning. So it's not affecting, this ordinance doesn't affect the building code. Does that answer the question, or that's not?
No, not.
I see.
Not exactly, Catherine. Because of the mechanical person in Pinellas County saying one thing, and he's the one that sent out the information.
That's the dots I'm still trying to connect. Who at PCCLB made this interpretation? Because we operate in conjunction with the Pinellas County Construction Licensing Board by state law. Is that correct, Jen? It's an overlay.
They're the licensing board for contractors within the county. But with regard to our code, we
interpret.
The building official interprets the building code for the city.
So we're trying to do the research, get this resolved. I can tell you this is a topic that's been sent to the state board of building officials. This is not just Treasure Island. This is something that's being tried to be clarified statewide.
Okay, so then I guess my question would be, if LPA is going to look at this on Thursday, I'm not sure until we get that clarification there should be much more action on it.
My concern is that I have many permits in here from people who want to replace their mechanical and electrical equipment, and this was trying to give them a path forward if they want to take it. Either under either code, and otherwise they have no path forward but a variance.
Okay.
So,
Mayor, if I may. Catherine, is there a way to word the ordinance so regardless of whichever decision is made, that the ordinance would not have to be changed and could come back for a second reading?
it's already worded that way specifically, that says if the equipment is required to be elevated by the building code, or our local floodplain code, which also has elevation requirements in specific instances, then this is a zoning accommodation of those codes. So it's already written that way. It wouldn't change based on this interpretation. It wouldn't change the zoning code proposed.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
makes sense to me.
All right. No, because we're already in discussion with the commission. So do we have a motion?
Sure. I move to approve ordinance 2024-27, amending Chapter 68, and schedule it for second reading and public hearing for the first commission meeting to be scheduled in January of 2025.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. In the discussion, do we have to put that date in now?
No, you have it for the first meeting in January.
Okay.
And so once you establish your meeting schedule, that will
We'll put
dictate
it
what
in.
your first meeting is, yeah.
Okay.
And we'll still go through all the proper advertisement that will identify that date and time of that meeting, and it will be published in the newspaper as well as on the city's website and the agenda.
Great, thank you. Any other discussion?
Good.
Great. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Dickey,
Aye.
Commissioner Minning,
Aye.
Commissioner Craybill,
Aye.
Mayor Doctor.
Aye.
Thank you.
The majority has it. Motion carries. All right. We're going to move on to the one item that I placed on here, which is I-4. And as I said...
Excuse me, Mayor, I'm sorry. Do you want to do I-3 first, which is the establishment of the
Oh, I'm
commission
sorry,
meeting schedule?
the calendar. Okay, let's do that. All right. Item I3, establishment of the 2025 City Commission meeting schedule. All right, I think that all of us have been given a schedule. Do we have any conflicts?
I don't have any.
None here.
None here.
Okay, then I think that this works.
I move to approve the adopted 2025 City Commission meeting schedule.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Dickey,
Aye.
Commissioner Minning,
Aye.
Commissioner Craybill,
Aye.
Mayor Doctor.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, now we will get to item I4, the last of it. And basically what this is, I put it down here as permitting subsequent to hurricanes. So I'm going to talk a little bit about it, and then we'll get to some point where we're going to have some discussion. But this commission and all of us up here, we need to have really only one priority. Doesn't mean we can't do other things, and we still, can't control, the city and everything else. But the priority, if there is a priority, then the number one thing is getting residents back into their homes. And so the second thing is that, I've been listening to folks, and you come in here on a Tuesday and a Thursday, and you get a lot of discussion going on. So we've received a lot of calls, messages about using option 2 to expedite permits. There has been no commissioner vote on either 1 or item 2. And I think that tends to be maybe a problem. We did pass along direction, but we did not have a roll call vote. And this is what I'm trying to establish, is to actually have a roll call vote that allows us to basically say that we're done with number 1. That's one of the biggest problems that I have. Everybody says, well, when I sit down with folks, they're very kind, they're very polite. A lot of them are volunteers and everything else, but they say, well, no, we're using 2 codes. We're using both option 1 and option 2. And on November 1st, at a special meeting, this commission discussed option 1 versus option 2 and agreed to proceed with option 2. Somehow in there, it kind of got mixed into the discussion about having 1 included with item 2. But that seems to be the biggest problem that I keep hearing, is that, they're saying, oh, well, no, they're telling me we're doing 1. And I think that what I'm trying to do is basically say, if this commission does the same thing we did on November 1st, that we're basically going to say that we are an option 2 city and be moving forward. By not voting this, when we had the opportunity as a commission, I think that we're delaying things, and it all depends on. And tomorrow night's going to be a big night, so we'll all understand what's going on there. But it's been almost 90 days since the hurricanes and 45 days since we had the vote, and so I am basically saying now. That it's in the best interest for us to adopt option 2 for permits and to go directly to the staff and have them follow up with option 2. And that is basically what I have for this evening. And so I don't know if I would, how I would proceed from this point, other than to say this would be more of like a resolution.
So normally when the commission does a resolution, that's something that's prepared in advance, because you have certain whereas clauses where you're making findings with regard to that, and then you're directing an action.
Yep.
That can certainly be direction that's given, and we can bring it back at a next meeting.
No, I'd like to take a vote tonight.
Okay. The other item, and certainly you can make a motion, the other item I just wanted to advise you of, and it's not to cause any kind of consternation. I didn't obviously know that you were going to add an item to the agenda, and you said in your rules, and it does at 4.5, says any commissioner may have an item placed on an agenda at any time consistent with the normal notice requirements. However, I did want to also point out in your rules that at 4.6, it says items that are not on the agenda with the consent of the majority of the commission present, it can be considered and acted upon at a regular or special meeting. And also, again, in 4.1, it says the commission shall, by consensus, indicate whether or not an item is to be placed on the regular meeting agenda, and the mayor shall set forth the agenda for the regular and special meeting of the commission with the approval of the majority of the commission. When I look at those 3, it would seem that just like the city manager can put things on the agenda, the city attorney can put things on the agenda, and a city commissioner can put something on the agenda, but that when you're in the meeting, if you're adding to it, and this is historically, I believe, the way you've done it, is you do a consensus approval to add it. So if you want to go forward as, interpreting it as any commissioner can place it on at any time, that's fine. My only suggestion would be is that we make this more clear in the rules so there isn't any kind of issue going forward in the future.
Okay. I have no problem with that. So the issue is that we still could take a vote tonight.
If the commission desires, yes, you can take, you can have a motion and
Okay, and so I actually have a motion that, so we can go this direction.
Thank you. Before, do we have comment or afterward?
Afterwards, we do. Correct. It would be a motion and a second.
You were going to say something?
Go ahead.
I move to adopt option 2 for permits and direct staff to follow option 2 in FEMA guidelines.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? I'm going to give you the gavel, which will take me out of being the...
it goes to one of the commissioners. I don't run a meeting. It goes to the vice mayor or...
I was told the city attorney is where it would go.
Oh,
I'm
no.
not sure what we're...
No,
So
I
what I'm
never
doing
run your
is
meetings.
I cannot do a motion or I cannot second a motion as long as I have the gavel.
Okay.
So I'm giving the gavel to the city attorney so that I can make the second.
That's fine, but I don't know who advised you of that, but we can figure out how to do it. So what normally happens is if you're unable, because you want to make the motion,
Okay.
to preside over the meeting, it would go to the vice mayor. In this case, because he made the motion you're looking to second, I would give it to the next commissioner, like the next longest standing commissioner. So that would actually go to Commissioner Manning.
Okay.
But I don't run your meetings.
Okay.
But thank you.
Well, you wouldn't actually run the meeting. All you do is basically call out what time it is for discussion and motions for votes and so forth.
Certainly. I just mean I'm not normally the presiding officer, but the next senior commissioner would be appropriate to preside over the meeting.
All right, so I will second the, and since now you are running this, this vote, we have a motion and we have a second.
Any discussion?
Yes, I'd like to know exactly what verbatim on what option 2 says.
Thank you.
Because I was not part of this commission at that point when you guys got those put out. And I would like to have, I want to know exactly what I'm voting for, word for word.
Ditto.
And I would just like the city manager to help us understand what we might see differently if we vote for this, or as opposed to having given the guidance. What would happen differently starting tomorrow or Tuesday by voting voting this?
I do have a copy of the FEMA substantial improvement, substantial damage desk reference. And in paragraph 7.5, it does say that communities have choices about how to handle making substantial damage determinations when many buildings have been damaged by a significant event. So what is referred to as option 1 or option 2, if I'm reading this correctly, for option 1, they can proactively inspect buildings soon after the event and use available information to estimate repair costs and market values. Those data can then be used to develop substantial damage determinations in advance of owners submitting applications with more details. Under option 2, they can notify owners of the requirement to get permits and then wait for property owners to apply for permits and make substantial damage determinations at that time, following their normal permit review procedures. So as I read this, you have to make substantial damage determinations under option 1 or option 2. And so what we're saying here for option 2 is that you make this, tell the owners the requirement to get the permits, wait for the permits to be submitted, make substantial damage determinations at that time, after the permit has been applied for, following normal permit review procedures.
So how is this going to change what we're doing now, is my question. If we vote unanimously to support this, how is it going to change what we're doing right now?
If I don't recall the exact verbiage that was in the motion, but I think this takes away the ability for people to use option 1 at all, if I'm correct. If I could hear the motion again, because here it's, if we're saying it's in the best, I think it said in the best interest to go to option 2. Is that correct in the motion?
Yeah, it says, I move to adopt option 2 for permits and to direct staff to follow option 2 and FEMA guidelines. But we had given you that guidance before, so, you know, we were assuming we were going with that.
And what's happening is that, and you hear it every day, and I'm probably sure that Commissioner Dickey hears it every day, that, you know, that I thought we were doing option 2. And the folks downstairs are saying, well, we're using either 1 or 2.
And I think the item, excuse me, for option 1 was for people who weren't sure what they wanted to do, so they wanted to get a substantial damage. No,
Please.
because they had an option for doing 1 or 2. Now, if I could read this, they can proactively inspect buildings soon after the event and use available information to estimate repair costs and market values. Those data can then be used to develop substantial damage determinations in advance of owners submitting applications with more detail.
Well, I think the problem would be, you know, it's when the folks come in to get their permit package, now you've got a person from the permitting department that's going to choose for them what's best. How do you do that? You know, it's, oh, we're going to use number 1 on you today. Well, we will use number 2. And I think that's what the issue is there. It's not clean cut. It's an option, but an option would say you either use 1 or you use 2.
And if you use option 2 or option 1, and in this case you're saying go with option 2, well, you still have to make a substantial damage determination after the permit is applied for.
Sure.
So the permit is applied for, a substantial damage determination has to be made, and then the permit can be issued.
Okay.
So I would think if you went on that
Yes, using
scenario, your biggest question would be, is how is that substantial damage determination going to be made, Mayor? I mean, because, either we're going to do it because of the 50% rule and what we have for our improvements, or is it going by, we're waiting for the SD estimator and all that information coming down? I think that's where part of our problem is where does making substantial damage determinations, that's the biggest part of that. What is our process for that? What's our mechanism for doing that?
What would, I don't know what the process, that's what I'm trying to determine as well. How do you use 1 and 2?
Director Youngkin, could you step up to the podium, please? If you could.
Oh.
See, currently what we have is we are getting information from the state who had done the inspections across the island, because the entire island is in the special flood hazard area. So every structure within this island is within the special flood hazard area and required an inspection after the storm. So what we had done is the state had contracted with a company called Tidal Basin to perform those inspections. That information was provided from the state to individuals who were housed in the county, who collected the data and provided the data to municipalities. And we were one of 15 municipalities that had contracted or worked through the state in order to get that information. That information is then taken and put into what is called a substantial damage estimator, which is a FEMA tool when you input the data values, which tells you the percent or the threshold where you fall in relation to the FEMA 50% rule, above or below the 50%. And that is your substantial damage determination. So what happens is we get that information from the state, it's provided to us, we manipulate it and then put it into the substantial damage estimator. And I say manipulate it because the data is not coming across clearly. We're having issues with the data from the state.
If somebody comes with a tape measure up to the front of your house on a fake line that's not there anymore because Milton washed it off.
And so what we do is we get the data, and they don't have all the fields always filled out, so we have to go back and make sure, and quality assure it and quality check it. So what happens is we take that and put that into the substantial damage estimation tool, and that produces the substantial damage estimation threshold.
Which we should have never had it.
Now, if we didn't have that information, what we could do is use available information to come up and determine locally what that substantial damage estimation is. And what we would do is there was initial damage assessments that were completed when the island was opened back up before residents were allowed to come back to the islands. So there was individuals who went out and who filmed and did initial damage assessments, and those were members from community development. We also have copies of other available information, such as insurance reports that are provided from FEMA and from the state, claims that have been submitted, and also a documentation that could be provided from an individual, pictures and such. And then that information is used to come up with your substantial damage determination. So there's kind of two options to do it. One using Tidal Basin and that company, and the second to do a local determination. The local determination is a more cumbersome process. Doesn't mean it can't be done, but it does take longer to do because we don't get the information that could be provided to us from the people who were doing the inspections when they initially came back on the island.
Okay, but that really goes back to when we got hit with Helene and then Milton as well, that there wasn't an option to the commission to say what we were going to do. You had either one or two, and it was chosen to be one because that's the direction that everything was going. And then finally it picked up on that there is another option, and that's what it is. It's options, one or two. And I think that it really, I don't know if it reads the way, but it's an or, not an and. And that's really the issue. So we used the first choice until it became, the noise got loud enough in the community that basically says 2 is a better option. And so, but now what we're doing is we're saying, well, we'll use either 1 or 2.
All right.
And Mayor, if I could, after it says that piece in paragraph 7.5, it says the first option offers a number of benefits that should make it easier for a substantial improvement, substantial damage requirement. One benefit is to property owners with information about the requirement to bring buildings into compliance before they get very far along with their plans to repair. Another benefit is that owners that have federal flood insurance policies will more quickly receive the community's substantial damage determination that they need in order to submit a claim for ICC coverage to their adjuster. The second option may pose more of a challenge to the community because many people begin repairs without getting permits. In addition, by the time owners apply for permits, they may have hired design professionals to develop plans for repairs and improvements that do not take into consideration the requirement to bring substantial improvement, substantial damage buildings into compliance.
Let me try to simplify this a little bit. If we unanimously, which we did before, gave guidance to the city to go with option 2, FEMA guideline, if we vote unanimously now, is this going to expedite the number of permits we can put out each week?
I would defer to Commissioner Youngkin, but I would think it would not, because regardless, you have to have a substantial damage determination done before.
Okay, please.
And I think that's where some of the misunderstanding is because if you went in and you requested us, and Catherine, please correct me if I'm wrong, if you came in and requested a substantial improvement on a house within the special flood hazard area, there is still a determination made for substantial improvement in relation to the 50% rule with FEMA. Am I-
Please, hold on. Okay, please.
Which is part of the normal permit processing procedures. So under substantial damage, you're doing the same thing because you're doing a substantial damage determination to see where you fall in line with the 50% threshold that FEMA has.
All right.
So in either one, in normal permit processing procedures, you are using the substantial damage estimation in relation to the 50%, whether it's substantial improvement or substantial damage. Okay. Would it make the permits go any quicker? I would again defer to Director Youngkin, but no, I don't think, it doesn't accelerate, and you're not going to issue a permit before the determination is done.
Okay. Would you agree with that, Catherine?
I would agree, and one thing I'd like to make clear is that the direction from the commission meeting on 11/1 was continue with option 1 that has been going on for those who wish to follow that path, and for people who have submitted permits to use option 2 to have a substantial damage determination without an inspection, period. So as staff had been doing from day 1, we were doing both. And we've always been doing both.
Okay.
That was the instructions from the commission, and we never made a determination to do one or the other. We were doing both. We've been accepting permits from the day we opened under the building when there was no power, no water, and no sewer in the building. So.
And Mayor, I'd like to just add on, I'm quoting out of FEMA here from their packet, but also within Chapter 66 of our ordinance and our floodplain regulation requires the substantial damage determination to be done. So it is not just the FEMA guidance that does it. When this came up, it was also the time we were meeting with representatives from the state and the Florida Department of Emergency Management. And we had been in contact with other communities who had experienced past storms, and their recommendations were in line with what we were doing. You know, this wasn't just, nobody on this staff wants to slow down getting people back into their homes.
I agree with that.
And nobody wants to hold up anybody being able to get a permit. No, you know, we process about 1,650 permits a year on a normal basis. We've probably gotten 1,200 to 1,300 within the last 2.5 months. You know, it is a bandwidth thing to try and get the permits issued as quickly as possible. But there is no holdup whatsoever in, you know, trying to slow any of this stuff down. But the substantial damage determination needs to be accomplished whether you go with option 1 or option 2. It does not mean if you go with option 2 that you can just issue a permit without that determination being done.
That's the issue.
Catherine, did I miss anything?
Do you want the citations from our local regulations, from our floodplain regs that say we must do a substantial damage determination?
No, that was my understanding all along, that we've had to do a substantial determination either under option 1 or option 2. So that really doesn't change anything, and that's why I really asked the question. If voting for this, which I'm perfectly fine voting for it, is it going to change anything? Is it going to help us issue permits quicker? And what I'm hearing from the city manager and Catherine is that it's not going to expedite permits, whether we, either way.
We can do it either way, but I can tell you that not continuing with the option 1 is going to push the people who have not applied for a permit are not going to get, we're going to push the permits in front of the substantial damage letters.
Which you were supposed to be doing anyway.
No.
Please, no. That's,
Continue with both, was the instructions from the commission. So right now, we are, I'll be happy to explain. If we get the data from the county that we can fill in the substantial damage estimator tools. We go ahead and run those and send those out because people want those. People ask every day, where's their letter? So I don't know of where we're doing that as well. We're reviewing permits every day, and we're reviewing them, and when we get to a permit that doesn't have that determination that's already come in, then we go ahead and do that determination manually. But it does take more time to do a manual determination because we've got to look at all the data that we have. That's the requirement of FEMA. You use all available data, and we have a lot of available data. We have photos, we have water lines, we have surveyed watermarks in the city, we have flood insurance claims. We have all kinds of data that we have to look at to make sure that the work in the permit matches this. If I see this, the work in the permit has to match that.
So let me ask a question. When we are looking at the letters going out,
Yes.
and I receive my letter and it says that that I'm at 22%.
Yes.
At that point, why wouldn't we be able to issue the permits within days?
So that is what's actually happening. We have two reviews. We have two sets of reviews. Let me clarify that. We have a substantial damage review sitting over here. Then over here, we have building, floodplain, zoning, fire, whoever else needs to look at a permit. So these reviews are going on while this review is going on. So when this review gets released from substantial damage, i.e. you're not damaged, that permit over here says, oh, that step is done. Let's push this permit up to the front of the queue, because that's already done. It's one less thing that needs to be done with that permit. But at the same time, we're doing first in, first out for this stack of permits. And doing the determinate, it goes backwards and we do this determination when we get to this permit. So we're doing both.
Okay.
So did I answer the question of faster or quicker?
Well, it would be reasonable to say, okay, I might get 22%, says that, okay, let's round up everything and let's send them back out. I mean, what else, what risk do we have in doing so?
So we still do a floodplain review, make sure all the work is in the permit. We make sure the permit is complete. It quite often needs a building review and a zoning review, depending on what it is. And those reviews have to be done. So they're being done. We're working on this stack and we're working on this stack. So whatever comes up first, that's what we do.
Okay.
But to answer your question, like if it's 22% and we've got the estimator tool ran 22% and the permit's showing 22%, that's a good match, right? We say, oh, this matches up, that floodplain number is not a problem.
But the number of permits that are moving out each week are tending to be kind of a stale number. We would assume that with all the new letters that have gone out and all the data that's gone out, that we'd be moving a lot of those from one stack to the other.
So yes, that is what we're doing because the data is finally starting to come. It's finally starting to roll in. Like we issued 969 letters as of Monday morning. So yes, we've gotten substantially more info in the last 3 or 4 days.
Okay.
We got a lot on Friday, and I think it was Wednesday last week. But as we said, we've got to run this through a tool, correct? First, we have to check it. I mean, we literally see bad info.
Okay.
And we have to check it all.
Let's move on then to public comment. So I've got a few cards, but as long as we can get through everybody, I'm fine. Come on up and give us your information on which district you're in.
Thank you, Mayor Doctor. I'm in the 2nd District, Isle of Palms on 1st Street. My name is Joseph C. Poltrone. And I My specialty is not zoning and permitting, but I am an attorney and I have read the statutes and I have read the law, and my interpretation is completely different. And I think corresponds with pretty much everybody else's here is that choosing option 2 allows a permit to be issued under the normal procedure, which would be in place had there not been a disaster. Now, that permit can be issued without any substantial damage determination. That does not relinquish the requirement that there is a substantial damage determination. It just does not, they don't coincide. They don't need to be run along together. That substantial damage determination can be done later. So all the time that is being spent doing it, putting in manually when we've chosen option 2 is a waste of time when people could be back in their homes. Me personally, I want to be, I got a foot of water in my house. I can have my house back together in 2 days, but we're back. We're 3 months now. Additionally, I'm one of the people that thank you, Ms. Crable, for your comments today. I'm one of the people that emailed you in response to raising my home. I want to raise my home, but first we need to get to this step. So even if they do deem that I'm more than 50% damaged, I still want to raise my home, so it doesn't even matter to me to where it is. And I think there's a lot of people in that position as well. So all the more reason why we should be interpreting this properly, which is option 2, normal permitting procedures, as it would be any other day. There's no substantial damage. If the repairs are under 50%, the permit should be approved. Then you can continue with waiting for whatever way we want to do the substantial damage determination. Thank you.
Thank you. West.
West Evans, Isle of Palms. Something I see happening is the same thing that happened, I believe, November 1st, when the commission said they wanted option 2. At the end, the attorney, the city manager, twisted it on you guys and said, okay, we'll go with that. But you guys mean we want option 1 running in the background, right? And everyone just kind of went along with it because you guys are nice guys. You just went along with it. I'll say right now, Diana Crable, you should have been reading up on this already. It shouldn't even have to be explained to you. The difference between option 1 and option 2, option 1, you get a substantial damage assessment. That is different than a substantial damage determination. That substantial damage assessment is used to make your determination. In option 2, you get a substantial damage determination. The way you get that determination is by looking at the permit and going, your house is worth $100,000, your repairs add up to $30,000. That determination right there shows that you're only 30%. That is the determination. Everyone keeps confusing substantial damage assessment with determination. The determination is made through normal permit process when it comes to option 2. I don't know why you guys keep sitting up here when they say they want option 2 and you keep trying to talk them out of it. What is going on? It's crazy. Option 2, vote yes on option 2. The same way you always grant permits is the way you do it under option 2. Yes, there is the threat of FEMA coming in and saying, hey, we're going to audit you. But we get audited by FEMA every year. If there's a permit that looks like it's being flim-flam going on it, you set it to the side, and that's the one you look deeper into. But if there's a $300,000 value on a house, and look, you guys know our houses weren't substantially damaged. We need drywall in them. They're not knocked off their foundation. If there's a house knocked off its foundation, then yeah, now you need to look into it closer. We just need our drywall, all right? Option 2, vote yes on it. Let's get in our homes.
Chris Clark.
guess I'm just going to second a little bit what Wes said, but I'm just going to use real numbers. For example, I use my own home. My 50% number is $300,000. I have a reputable local contractor, Ken Fritz, by the way. He told me I should say his name next time, so he does good work. But anyhow, he came in, looked at my home, said it was going to cost $131,000 to fix. So I turned that permit in on October 31st. All that had to be done under option 2 was look at that. Okay, does this 131 seem like it adds up? And if it does, then I'm way under the 50%. Boom, that was your substantial damage determination right there, and you could have issued a permit. Now, let's say he came back and said it was going to cost $4 to fix my house. You guys would have said, man, something's fishy going on here. We're going to throw this one aside and wait. And that's as simple as it is. We're doing option 1 because we want to cover ourselves with FEMA for fear that, our insurance might go up $15 next year. It's all a smokescreen, and it really is. And it's just, that is why you have such people that are so upset. I mean, it's your normal permitting process. And if I said it was going to cost $4, you throw it aside, you come back, you argue with me, you don't issue the permit because, yeah, you're going to get audited. But if you do your best to look and say, yeah, that makes sense, $131,000 to fix it, and you stamp the permit, you're not going to get audited and get in trouble with FEMA. That is all just gobbledygook. So, I mean, and what I don't understand is you guys were all for it. You all voted for it. And now that the rubber really, you all know that we didn't do it. Everyone knows now. Everyone back there knows. You all know we never did option 2. We did option 1. And so now when the rubber meets the road, now there's questions about whether we're gonna vote yes for it. And that is why you have all these people so upset, just so you know. Because it seems underhanded, really, a bit. So now you know why people are upset. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Andrew Vasey.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mayor Doctor, thanks for bringing this up. August 1st, option 2, I just don't understand why there's even this much confusion. Option 2, as the lawyer said, as Wes said, as Chris said, it's a math problem. You take the cost of repair, you divide it by the assessment, whether you use Twitty's assessment or you went and got a private one, that produces a percentage. That gives you your substantial damage determination. So, Mr. Dickey, you asked, what would the difference be? The difference is we're not waiting for a letter that comes in that if we accept option 1, pushes us into some sort of undetermined appeals process, because I got a one-page letter telling me I'm 65% damaged. I don't get the backup to it. I'm in option 1, now I got to appeal it. Option 2 lets me take the letter and throw it in the trash. I can come in with a permit, normal process. You guys do this every year because our homes are in flood zones, so we always have to do a determination when you talk about a substantial improvement, not in a storm event. We also have to be under that. Secondly, we brought you Jacobs to enhance the ability of the permit department to turn out permits. So you take option 2, we've talked about this before. This is turning into like Groundhog Day, where we talked about the red, yellow, green light. Jacobs, they can do math. Trust me, I've worked with them before. They can divide one number by another and produce a percentage. We should be able to turn those out. The fact that we're being told it will take longer to do the normal permitting process, then we're waiting on letters with bad information that we have to then be forced into some unstructured appeals process makes no sense. You all did the right thing on November 1st where you wanted option 2. We went through all of these, which was how we got you there. And then there was this discussion about, well, we want to vote on it. Well, you don't really need to vote on it. You can just give some direction. And at the very end of the meeting, as some of you know, some statement was read that was dragged up just a little while ago, okay? You're the commissioners, you're elected, you run the government. Please vote for option 2 tonight, and please instruct the staff to follow option
option 2, and please do not accept that this will take longer. Get Jacobs to put more people in if you have to. Clear the people out of the way that are holding this up. The simple permits should have been out the door already. The ones that are within 30, 40%, take a closer look. And as we've suggested before, and Arden, you're doing the right thing by working with the people who are coming in over 50%. Did they get an unscrupulous contractor who gave them a very high number and that's pushing their number up? Are they too low on their appraisal? Can you get that up? That's also the right thing to do. But under option 2, we should have been doing this already. And this idea that we might get kicked out, or if we did this, our rate might go up. Again, scare tactics that have been laid on here. There's no empirical data. No one has come into you and said, commissioners, here's the 17 cities that got kicked out of NFIP because they went and didn't do option 1. Option 2 is available. I've spoken to State Senator Nick Sigley. I've talked to Luna's office. They're willing to come in tomorrow. You guys are doing the right thing by doing this. You did the right thing 45 days ago. Let's codify it. Let's do it for the right reason, which is to get permits out the door, get people back in their homes. You had the right idea, and that's what we're looking for tonight. And appreciate your support on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sarah?
I'm so glad that you brought this up tonight, John Doctor, because this has been really the boiling point, I think, for all of the citizens of Treasure Island is this option 1, option 2, and I'm thankful that we're revisiting it. Option 2 is one sentence only, and I can paraphrase it by saying that you make the substantial damage determination using the normal permitting process. That's it. It is not any more complicated than that, so I don't know why it is being made more complicated than that. I'm a stickler for accuracy. I actually even went to a FEMA meeting and asked the person from FEMA, Chuck was there, does option 2 require a substantial damage assessment, meaning those inspections? And the FEMA person said, no, it does not require a substantial damage assessment. I even videoed it because I wanted to know for myself. And I can't even comprehend how we're still having this conversation when I thought we should all be on the same page. It's only one sentence. Think back like Idalia or whatever storm it was a couple years ago. We had a few neighbors that their homes flooded. Did they have to wait for a substantial damage assessment to be done? No, they didn't. They got their permits by submitting their permits like normal, and a substantial damage determination was made at that time. And that's what you're supposed to be doing with option 2. I don't know why it's been made this complicated. It's very clear. If any of you want to see the video from the person from the horse's mouth at FEMA saying that it is not required with option 2, I'm happy to share that with you. And I also want to point out at that November 1st meeting, I actually did go up and speak to Ms. Cowan, and I said, since we just all decided on option 2, shouldn't it be stop the presses, call off the substantial damage assessments? Why are we, I heard you say at the end, oh, we're going to keep that running in the background. And I thought, why? We just voted on option 2, which means we don't need substantial damage assessments. And I specifically asked about that, but I just kind of got a roundabout, I'm sorry, I don't like calling people out, but I did. I got a roundabout answer that was a non-answer. And the reality is that with option 2, we absolutely do not need substantial damage assessments. And I'm glad you brought it up tonight because I think we need to settle this once and for all. Thank you.
Mark Holly.
Thank you. I know it's my second time up here, and I didn't know I needed to fill a card out. Aside from all the other discourse, earlier this evening I mentioned to you the concerns with the data. And even Catherine, thanks to her, mentioned that as well, that there are concerns about the data that's being given to us by third parties. And I think it just makes good sense that we would trust legitimate licensed contractors to make a honest bid on the job that needs to be done to rebuild somebody's house, and then an honest, legitimate appraisal of that property to be used to do the simple math problem to determine whether it's substantially damaged or not, rather than waiting for some unknown, multiple tentacled third-party data that comes in here that says the property is worth this, and here's how much we think it's going to cost to fix it, and telling us what that end result is. That's what we have, and I think you're going to find, and I think you'll acknowledge that, we're going to find the data's bad, and we've lost 10 weeks of time waiting for that data, and if it gets covered up, it's going to be the greatest tragedy, instead of acknowledging that we've gotten bad data and it's put a lot of people at risk, rather than following a common sense approach and holding to the rules we already have in place. So think about it. Option 2.
Okay, we'll call public comments closed. Yes.
I have a question to Catherine and to Chuck. From the discussion that you've heard so far this evening, is there a reasonable conclusion that substantial determinations are not needed at this time?
Assessments, yeah.
No, determinations.
Assessments as in inspections? Is that
Well, the inspections are part of the determination.
correct?
So a determination letter is sent out that your property is or is not substantially damaged, and it's based on the assessment. What I'm saying is, if we're saying we can go ahead and issue a permit based on no substantial damage determination letter being issued, and that would come in the future sometime, is that a valid assessment? Is that a valid approach?
So option 2 clearly states we make the substantial damage determination at that time. So that letter would go with the permit.
Do you need the letter? That's
You
my
don't
po-
want the
that's my
letter, you
question.
don't need to look at it, but we have to make a determination as a city, based on our code and based on FEMA's guidance,
Before any
at the
permit,
time of permitting.
at the time, before any permit is issued. That's the issue. Is
So you
what
have to
I'm
make a
hearing
substantial
from the
damage
folks
determination.
is that a substantial damage determination is not needed, is what I'm hearing from the folks, that you can go ahead and issue a permit without a substantial damage determination. That could be done 2 weeks from now.
It says make a substantial damage determination at that time in the FEMA desk reference. Also, our code says that when we review a permit, compare the cost to perform the improvement, the cost to repair a damaged building to its pre-damaged condition, or the combined cost of improvements and repairs, if applicable, to the market value of the building or structure. Determine and document whether the proposed work constitutes substantial improvement or repair of substantial damage. So the city has to make that determination.
Before a permit is issued. That's really what we're talking about.
And I'm sorry, I misspoke. On your question of whether they need the letter, we must notify the applicant if it is determined that the work constitutes substantial improvement or repair of substantial damage.
Okay, now, in the normal process of issuing a permit, anybody here comes in,
Yes.
goes to your office, applies for a permit, you all do a review, and part of that review is, are you compliant with a 50% rule? Okay, is that like a substantial damage determination?
That's a substantial improvement calculation that we normally do on a daily basis. But what the difference is here is we have to make sure that it's not substantially damaged, because we are in a post-hurricane status where we still need to make that determination whether it's over or under 50%, based on the permit and all available documentation.
Okay, but you have to do that anyhow in the normal process,
Yes,
right?
we do. Yes, we could well see a substantial improvement application, and we see them, where the value is 60,000 and they only have 100,000, we have to say no.
Okay. But why,
But a substantial improvement is different than a substantial damage in one critical way. A substantial improvement is you choose to make an improvement to your house. Substantial damage has to account for all costs to return the building to pre-damage condition.
well, why don't I just not do that? And why don't I just come in and apply for a remodel?
We have to assure that you've returned your building to pre-damage condition with the money, with your 50% money. So
Okay,
if
sir.
you came in for a remodel and we knew you had substantial damage, we're going to have to make sure that permit includes the work for to return the building to pre-damage condition.
And why does an owner have to return the building to pre-damage condition?
If the owner applies for a permit, the permit must return the building to pre-damage condition.
What, is that in the code? Where does that come into play, please?
So compare the cost to perform the improvement, the cost to repair a damaged building to its pre-damage condition, or the combined cost of improvements and repairs, if applicable, to the market value of the structure.
Okay, is that in our code?
Yes, that's straight out of our code. That's section 66-103.4.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had, John.
You're actually the mayor now.
In that case,
I seconded it, so I
this
couldn't
meeting is
do-
closed. Everybody go home.
Well, we just have the vote, and then we can close out the meeting.
Is there any other comments? Chuck, Jennifer, Catherine? I think we've hit on what the issues are. I'm not sure we've resolved them. Any further
Can I have a roll
discussion?
call?
So, yeah, that's what I'm, no further discussion? Okay, do we have a motion?
Yeah, we already had the motion.
And second.
Oh, you seconded it. That's right. Okay, roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Dickey,
Aye.
Mayor Doctor,
Aye.
Commissioner Craybill,
Aye.
Commissioner Minning,
Aye. I'm turning it back to John.
We're going to have a workshop here in, let's call it 8:15. We are now adjourned.
And welcome to the Commission's workshop on December 17th, 2024. I'd like to call this meeting to order. The first item of business is the city attorney and city manager reports.
I don't have anything to report other than to wish you all very happy holidays, Merry Christmas. And I do have, at the end of this, I have a small presentation, and it's just from an educational, informative standpoint on procurement process, just so that you know with some of these projects what will be involved in that process overall from a timing standpoint and who the players are and things like that.
Great, thank you. Chuck?
No, thank you, Mayor. So just a couple items, if I could, please. First would be the notice of a public workshop and hearing. The Board of Trustees of the Internal Improvement Trust Fund of the state of Florida is proposing the reestablishment of a portion of an erosion control line in Treasure Island. They will hold a public workshop and a public hearing immediately following the workshop at City Hall on Wednesday, January 22nd from 6 to 8 for the purpose of considering evidence bearing on the location of the proposed erosion control line. This erosion control line location is necessary for the beach erosion control project known as Pinellas County Shore Protection Project, Treasure Island segment. And that would be a proposal that Pinellas County has with the Army Corps of Engineers to be able to do a beach renourishment project. So this is the erosion control portion, and they're seeking feedback at the workshop.
Can I add one thing to that, just to be clear? So that'll be the proposed line that they're talking about would be out from basically the parking lot right here in front of you down Sunset. So just for the individuals, in case they were wondering where this is pertaining to.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. City of Treasure Island offices will be closed to the public in observance of the Christmas holiday on Tuesday, December 24th, and Wednesday, December 25th. Offices will also be closed for the New Year's holiday on Wednesday, January 1st. For tomorrow's town hall, as mentioned earlier, we extended an invitation to the Pinellas County property appraiser, and the deputy for appraisals, Kevin Hayes, is available to attend. We are working to 100% confirm his attendance. We have not heard back, but we had been told that he would be in attendance.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Last thing, if I could, Community Development had released a 2-page condo multi-tenant substantial damage memo to the community yesterday and posted it on our website. This will provide guidance for multi-tenant and multi-structure properties within the city to help those entities work through how to calculate substantial damage and what to submit with their applications. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. All right, so we have one item tonight, and it is for consideration and discussion. And Chuck, are you going to lead us off?
Yes, I will. Mayor,
All right.
Thank you. So a few months ago, Mayor and Commissioners, what I took a look at after coming into the job was the amount of projects and work product that the city was involved in and responsible for. What had been provided previously to the commission was a large spreadsheet that is very similar to this one, which listed all the items from a project and product workflow that the city had been involved in, dealing with construction and non-construction items. So looking at that and talking to the commissioners individually, one of the things that I was told during my hiring process was that the city has a number of projects that they're involved in, but, for one reason or another, there wasn't clear guidance or the ability to move out and to work and complete necessary items that needed to be done for the city's infrastructure. As I met with the commissioners, I provided a copy of this worksheet to them and asked them to prioritize their top 5 items. And what we come up with, if you look up at the board tonight, is by commissioner, their top number 1 through number 5 items. So if I looked at Commissioner Minnings up there on the board, MPS stands for the Master Pump Station and Public Works Facility Construction. That would have been Commissioner Minnings' number 1 priority, and that was worth 5 points. So each one of the commissioners and the mayor was asked to please give their top 5 items that they wanted the city to focus on in the coming year. If you go down to the totals, down at the bottom, you can see the 5 items that came in with the highest scores were the master pump station, public works facility construction, then the public safety facility, seawalls, dune walkovers, and a Treasure Bay overhaul. Now, what a Treasure Bay overhaul is that there's a number of items that are on the spreadsheet having to do with the Treasure Bay building, ADA compliance, functionality of the location, including the tennis courts. So there were one commissioner and the mayor that wanted some work done out at Treasure Bay. And under Mayor Doctor, he had Treasure Bay tennis courts, and Commissioner Toth had Treasure Bay overhaul. So that brought them in at 4 points. So the top 5 items there that the city will be focusing on are those top 5 items. That doesn't mean that we're going to stop doing any other work, nor are we going to not take advantage when the advantage is there of smaller scale projects. You know, I know the mayor had mentioned that we should take a look at all the projects that we have projected that could cost approximately $30,000 or less on the smaller scale projects. We still intend to do those projects, but not to be the main focus. And that's what we were looking to try to drive to, is to find the commission direction for the top 5 items that the commission wanted the city staff to focus on in the coming year. And that also doesn't mean we're not going to do other things that arise. You know, for example, a beach renourishment, you know, is not something that you say no to. It's not listed on here, but that is something that just will have to be done. So what I would like to do is just, if there needs to be discussion, or if there's any questions related to any of this, to have that discussion, have the commission's, understanding and acknowledgement of the top 5 projects. And on a quarterly basis, we will be working, if not more, to bring you and keep you up to speed on the steps that are taken in each one of the projects to get them moving along. Primarily, they're all construction related, so there will be a procurement piece and, a design phase, RFP, RFQs, et cetera. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
On the public safety facility reconstruction, what's the concept?
Concept would be at a, commission direction. I mean, if we wanted to have a public safety, joint police and fire facility infrastructure, then we could do that if there was a desire to have something separate. But it would be construction because of the hurricanes, demolishing the buildings, the police department and the fire department and the public works facility. We need to make sure that we can get that infrastructure back in place. For example, we're paying approximately, I think it's $45,000 a month to temporarily house our fire and police administration and our firefighters who are on call 24/7, 365 in those facilities. So being able to work with, to get this public safety facility built is definitely a priority.
So what's the next step in this process?
Next step in the process depends upon the project, and what I want to do is bring back the next steps for each one. For the public safety facility reconstruction, we have to go out and being that the building was destroyed, there was a budget that was originally set, and I don't know what year this was in, for approximately $8 million. But we do have to go out and work through the RFP, RFQ process to start with the design, because we don't have a design. We had a concept that was provided a number of years ago for that facility.
And where would that facility be located?
That would be up to the commission. I can pick a spot, but if you want to leave it to me. No, I think there's pros and cons. The previous commission, from what I understand, had looked at having the facility adjoining the city hall facility here, but there's also been discussion about having a joint public safety facility over at their existing location over on 108th Street. So I think that's something that I can bring back to a workshop, so maybe there's a little bit more time if the commission would desire that. And then we can have have it discussed at a workshop where we would want to have or where the commission would like to have the facility placed, or we could come back with some options and some pros and cons for those locations.
I would think come back with some options and have a workshop.
And have the pros and cons on,
Yeah.
on all locations considered.
Got it.
Chuck, on a related subject, my fifth choice up there, not fifth choice, but fifth priority was parking lots. But I really, and that wasn't even on this document that you gave us. What I really picked up on was on the first page of the document you gave us was Heron Lot reconstruction. That's one parking lot, and it's, for those of you that don't know, it's the southernmost parking lot on Treasure Island. But I turned that particular project around and said, we need to focus on getting all of our beach parking lots refurbished and reconstructed so that they can be open to the public and so that we can start getting parking revenue again. 10% of our revenue for next year, in our current year rather, is parking lot revenue, and beach parking lot revenue specifically. So not making that a priority, it concerns me because we have so much revenue following, not to mention it's our, other than our people, it's our biggest asset that we have in Treasure Island is our beaches, and we need to get those functioning, properly, so that people can park there and so that we can get the revenue that comes along with that.
Yes, Commissioner, you did put down the Herring parking lot, and I looked at, when you gave me the input there, I took a look at, it seems it's very similar to seawalls. You can say seawalls, but there's a prioritization that we need to look at when we take care of doing the seawalls, and there's more than one, and there's more than one parking lot that we need to take care of also. But I understand the prioritization with the Heron parking lot first, and working to, we've got the Gulf Front one across the street here, and making sure those are functioning and up and operating.
Okay. I was pleased to see the consistency with the commission in terms of their priorities. I mean, every one of us picked the public safety facility as a second option, and we're almost all unanimous on the master pump station as well as the public works facility. So I was glad to see that consistency, because certainly because of the storms, those two were probably high on the list already, but now it's, we have to we have to have some action there as soon as possible.
Correct, Commissioner. The only thing I would add, I would have had this out sooner, but there was one commissioner who sat on their list until the very last minute. I don't know why they did that. I think it was just to make me sweat because I wouldn't get it in time for the meeting this evening.
Oh, dear.
All right. So if there's no further questions from the commission on the top 5 projects.
John, can I just ask a clarifying point? Where it says LDR Phase 1, 2 interim, I understand the Phase 2 and interim would be something that could be done whenever. But just the LDRs with regard to the Phase 1, that is a deadline that's driven by statute?
Correct. So, it needs to be completed by July of 2025.
Yes. Correct. So yeah, I know it ranked lower, but that is something that the city's going to have to move forward with just because of the statutory timeframes. I just want to make sure that we were all on the same page. And
yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's one of the items that, although it's not in the top 5, it's just something that has to be done. There's an outside driver in there, and that's a state statute. So we're going to make sure we meet that. And Kimley Horn's presentation was the opening and introduction on that piece at the last meeting. So what we'll do now is we'll go back, and what we need to do is we'll come back and have a workshop for the public safety facility. But at the same time, we're also going to get a current status of where we are with each one of the top 5 projects. Because I know I think it was the master pump station and the public works construction, I think there was a 30% design that had already been completed. Right. And I want to make sure that, the commission has the most informed information that they can when we have these discussions to make the smartest decisions, whether it's coming from a cost or a sizing or a scoping or a phasing perspective.
Okay.
Good. Thank you. And what we're going to move to here next would be what Jennifer had talked to, was having to talk procurement.
Okay, so while they get that loaded, this isn't meant to be an all-inclusive procurement presentation. It's, I don't know, 10 slides maybe, 8 slides. But it's more just to give kind of a generic overview of this. So a lot of times, particularly for some of our newer commissioners who maybe haven't had as much exposure to public procurement, private procurement can be very different than public procurement. Public procurement is highly regulated, as you would expect, because you are the stewards of the public's funds. So the other thing I wanted to let you know is that there are many, many laws on procurement, and they are, it's highly regulated, and also almost every single year it changes. In the last few years, the legislature has been, and I think you all may know this because you've probably seen my legislative update memos that are, I think, now at like 50 pages. Last year, there were over 100 laws that changed that affected local government. I'm sorry, the year before. And then last year was 94 different laws that affected local government. So procurement is just one aspect of that, but it is constantly changing. And then last, obviously, it's a little more complicated because public policy is that it favors competition, hoping that in some aspects you get the most qualified person, and in other aspects you get the cheapest. Yes. So let me go through. Mainly, it isn't, I don't want you to ever think that if you put out a bid or something and you have only one person apply, that you can't accept that bid. But it's more governing that when you go out for bid or RFP or RFQ or any of that, that you're trying to solicit that competitive, you're trying to solicit competition. Whether or not they choose to come in, that's nothing you can control. So you certainly can award if there's only one bidder, but again, oftentimes we go out to try to prevent favoritism and encourage competition. So here are some of the legal considerations that we look at with regard to procurement. First of all, there are constitutional prohibitions. So where do you get your power from? Are you procuring this for a public purpose? There are lending credit prohibitions, which means you can't lend the city's credit to a private entity. And then, of course, there are sunshine law and public records law implications, as well as there are numerous statutory impacts. Generally, with federal law, the procurement gets a little more complicated because if there's federal money involved, the feds require that we incorporate all of their provisions with regard to those procurements. So it can substantially lengthen your contract. It can also affect the cost of that contract. Because from the contractor's perspective, that's additional laws they have to be complying with and additional liability that they're taking on. Then with regard to the state, I said 40 plus laws, and that's just a rough guess. But whether you're dealing with public construction, bonding requirements, there's different procurement requirements, and we'll go through it a little bit with regard to engineering versus construction. There's also specific, sometimes, provisions depending on what service you're getting. So for instance, when you wanted to get new auditors, that's a completely different process than you normally go through, and it's statutorily driven. So there are just some unique processes in there too. And then, of course, there's your local provision. What does your charter say, your code, and your procurement policy? And last, depending on how the procurement is funded, you could have additional requirements. So oftentimes when you have you take on grants like from the state will have specific language that also needs to be contained in your procurement. So this is just kind of a ballpark. Like I said, for some of these projects, I'm really focusing on construction more than anything else because you were looking at this in the context of a lot of public construction projects in prioritizing or in identifying your priorities for the city. So with regard to procuring construction contracts, there are statutes out there that says if it costs $300,000 or more for a construction project, you have to go out to bid. Now, with every law, there are exceptions. So I don't want you to think that this is the end-all be-all, but I did want to provide you that generally that's the first kind of threshold we look at. What's a good estimate for this construction project, and knowing that if it's over 300, we're probably putting it out to bid. Interesting, if it's over 200, we have to advertise it in the newspaper, and there's timeframes associated with that. I don't know why the numbers don't match up, but that's the way Florida statute is right now. So.
Newspaper.
Yeah, and if only you could just put it on the website, but it actually requires newspaper. You know, every year there's a lobby on whether or not it can just go to websites or whether or not you still have to continue to publish. So it's kind of interesting that you bring that up. The legislature did change that, the 300 and the 75, to allow it to increase based on a cost index. So know that that is rolling. And here's the advertisement I was mentioning. So if it's over 200,000, it has to be advertised for at least 21 days prior to the bid opening and 5 days prior to any pre-bid conference. And if it's 50,000, then it's 30 days. I only put these in here just to let you know that when we're talking about the timing of these events, we can have the package ready, but then if we have to advertise it for 20 or 30 days, that's added into your overall timeline. And this is procuring professional services. So, and I've actually done this kind of backwards, but when you think about a project, the first thing you do is you get a designer, okay? You're gonna have to have somebody to design what you're going to construct. If you're hiring for engineering, architecture, mapping, surveying, you have to go through what's called the Consultants Competitive Negotiation Act, which is CCNA. And that is for any projects, hold on, that are over, I'm so sorry, there is a typo on there for sure. With regard to a study being 35,000 and 325,000. There was a period in there, and there should not be an extra zero. Those are not millions. But in the 35,000, so when you think about that, think about the studies you're doing. Let's say that you wanted to study maybe a bike path and where you're going to put it all through the city, and you hire somebody to come in and conduct that study. If it's over 35,000, you've got to go through CCNA. For construction, if the individual cost of the construction is 325,000, then you are also going to have to go through CCNA. So that's a two-step process. So now all we're doing is we're hiring the designer. And the first thing we have to do is we go out, we put out an RFQ, we get that selection in, and that is all based on qualifications. As a matter of fact, price can't be included. So you're going through this and just looking at who is the best qualified engineer for the design work. That then comes before the city commission, and you rank them. You rank them 1 through 3 or more. And then we go to the negotiation and award. City staff starts with whoever you've ranked number 1, and they start that negotiation process. If for some reason it's not successful, because maybe they're, now we're seeing dollar amounts and they're just extraordinarily high or out of market, then they go to number 2. If they're not successful at number 2, then go to number 3, and so forth and so on. So once they've negotiated a successful contract, it comes back before the commission, and you award that contract. So when we're talking about design, remember we've created the RFQ, we've put it out for solicitation, which you're probably giving them at least 30 days to respond. Then you're going through the qualifications process and a commission meeting. Then you're going through the negotiation award process and a commission meeting. So you can see that just in hiring a designer, it can be quite time-consuming.
Right.
After you procure those professional services, then you would also go and do the construction services. And like I showed you before, even if you had those documents together, you have advertising requirements of anywhere to 20 to 30 days. You would leave. You may only give them 30 days to respond. You may give them more. It just depends on the construction project. You get that in, and then it comes before the commission, and the commission awards that contract. So the other thing I wanted to let you know is that there are also variations on a theme. So what I've talked to you about right now is your traditional, it's called design, bid, build. But there's also a process called a design build, which is, again, where you combine those two processes. What you do in that instance, and I'll just walk through it real quick, is you actually hire a designer. They come up with the criteria. So again, thinking of the process. And then that criteria, just those criteria are put out, and you have firms that come in and go, I will design the project that meet that performance criteria and be the builder as well. There's pros and cons in the traditional and in the design build contracts. I will tell you the city has generally done the traditional design, bid, build. But there are local governments that do design build. There's also something called a construction manager at risk. This is something that hasn't been done in Treasure Island before, but it is another option when it comes to procurement. Once again, there's advertisements, there's solicitations, and then there's awarding. And with construction manager at risk, there's normally some communication with regard to the design as far as you have a designer on board who's designed the project, but the construction manager at risk works with them to see if maybe there's a more cost-effective way of being able to do something. Once they've kind of talked about that design and you have that finalized, they give you a guaranteed price for which they'll come in with their subs and build that project. So it's another procurement. But all of these, no matter which path you take, are significant time. Now, this next one, I don't want you to be scared by, okay, because this is just an option for how timing can be. It is not mandatory, and I'll talk through why these are even assigned. This is in working with staff and kind of trying to get an idea of time frames from the moment you decide, hey, we want to do this project, all the way down until you've got a shovel with dirt. So first of all, there's staff, and they're developing those procurement documents. For the ones that they've done, we have those kind of standardized documents in place. That could be quicker than the 12 weeks. For the ones we've never done, that would be development of whole new procurement documents that could take significantly longer. Then you have if you have a designer involved and you're going through the traditional, it's a two-step process. That seems like a lot with 24 weeks. Again, it depends on the type of project you're doing. If it's, I don't want to say garden variety, but I mean, if it's something where there's been a lot of standard designs on it, it's probably going to take them a lot less. If you have a lot of complicated matters, and particularly if you have permitting issues, they can be working with the permitting agencies. We've separated that out, and I've got a big question there because oftentimes during the design, they'll be working with the permitting agencies to even see what is permitted in their design. Being a coastal community, depending on what you're doing with seawalls, whether or not it's state lands or actually city lands, all of that can impact it. And I can give you an example on that. When we were looking at Treasure Bay and getting that permitted, that living shoreline, they went through everything on the permitting process with SwiftMud, DEP, and then it went to state lands. And it was only in that end of that permitting that we realized about the state lands, and in order to resolve that issue, we actually went back to historical aerials, I think back to the 1940s, to demonstrate where those properties had been. And this was, on Paradise, where there wasn't even construction at that time. So we were looking at them and determining and drawing lines and working with the state surveyor just to get it identified that actually those were city lands, not state lands, and they were able to permit it. So obviously on something like that, that process might be even longer. That is not your traditional project but I do want to make you aware that that timing is flexible. Then you have your construction contract that actually goes out to bid. Again, we have 12 weeks there. I think that too depends on the notice that's required and how long you need to give them to assemble their team and submit a bid. If it's a very traditional build, I think that that's something that might be shortened. If it's something that's more complicated and you're going to have multiple different contractors who are kind of coming together and putting in a joint bid, it could be on the longer side. And then, of course, that's bringing it also to you, having you award, and then issuing a notice to proceed and having them put a shovel in the ground. So I bring this to you only from the standpoint of an informational piece, and to say that, you've identified projects, and obviously they're not, staff isn't necessarily working on anything one at a time. So these will be happening. But when we're looking at all the projects and the timeframes involved, I wouldn't want you to think that, okay, the master pump station, that's first on everybody's priority, that we're going to be bringing you contract documents next month because it's gonna take a little while, and in large part that's because of the restrictions, just the legal restrictions that we have to comply with regard to public procurement. So I know I've gone through this rather quickly, but it's the end of the night. But if you have any questions, and again, this was just to bring this out for conversation, I'm happy to take any questions that you have. Oh, one other thing I'll add is those factors that I identified there, just understand that's if everything goes well. Because you can also have challenges that happen, and that can prolong those procurements as well. So, and you can have funding source agreements that require additional timing, and that can affect it as well. So, any questions?
I guess I'm pretty surprised when I see that timeline in particular, so thank you for alerting us to that.
Yeah.
But when I was doing the math in my head, $45,000 a month times the number of months we're talking about before a facility would even be ready to be moved in, maybe 3 years out there.
So I think some of that will, and I'm not saying that will necessarily follow on that. I know that there are construction companies that traditionally serve police and fire, and so they're probably much more accustomed with that kind of build, even if you were to do a combined unit. Again, also with design, many municipalities have police and fire or one or the other stations within their municipality. So I think that that's something that is more of a traditional design. And then we're also, talking about, are there other ways that we could use maybe one of those other procurement, kind of weighing it, one of those other procurement processes that could speed this up faster without jeopardizing the quality and putting the city at any additional risk.
My question would be with the, and probably for the two chiefs, the safety building, we don't have any facilities, we're in trailers. Do we feel as though we're going to get money from the state or federal government or somebody to help us build?
I will let them speak.
And Mayor, while they do come up, what I need to also clarify is when I talk about $45,000 a month, right now we're at the 100% cost reimbursement back from FEMA. And so the first 4 months, I think it's the first 120 days are reimbursable. After that, it becomes a 75-25 split. So 75% is done from FEMA, 25% to the city, where half of that is normally paid for by the state. So our cost share would be 12.5% on a monthly basis of that $45,000 after the 120-day point.
For how long?
It can go up to 2 years, but the caveat is that you're actively working towards a permanent facility.
Right.
They'll keep doing extensions for you.
Good.
2 years, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, as bad as this is to speak about, and you saw this happen in Milton, we had those facilities delivered after Helene, and when we were in crosshairs for Milton, they came and picked them up and took them away again.
So if we, again, are in the crosshairs for another storm, this next storm season, that's something else we need to consider, so. And as long as Chief Barr says, as long as we're in the process, design phase, building phase, they're more likely to grant us a further extension for that rent.
So to your question about funding, we had a good discussion with the bond attorney and our city attorney last week regarding single project limits. So that's something we'll need to get into and look at, and staff will bring you recommendations on that. It's a reimbursement resolution that we could look at, which would basically be, and the attorneys would have to explain it better than I do, but basically we're assuming we're getting FEMA money, we're assuming we're getting insurance proceeds, we'll have ad valorem taxes coming in, and potentially legislative budget appropriations from the state. So we can do some things to make our cash flow situation a little better while we await those. We had our kickoff meeting for Hurricane Milton today and our scoping meeting for Hurricane Helene with FEMA. We're now, for Helene, we're on the hook for 60 days to develop a damage inventory. That's a list of all the damage we sustain, which these projects will be part of. These are large projects because they're over $1 million. So we can phase those to get parts of that money coming in sooner rather than later, potentially. I hesitate to put the cart before the horse, but we got information from our state lobbyist that for the upcoming legislative session, we can reach out to our state legislators, specifically Representative Cheney, and submit a legislative budget request. I've been working up some numbers on that. Potentially, when we first looked at this facility back in 2019, we were looking at $8 million. We had COVID, we had all the price increases in construction, the material scarcity scare, and as you look at your property values, things have just gone up. Latest estimates I've seen are $750 to $850 a square foot for this type of facility. If you want to do a Taj Mahal, $1,200 a square foot. So doing the math at $800 a square foot, we're looking right around 10,000 plus design, or I'm sorry, 10 million plus design. With that being said, I would think we will have, Jess tells me, several $100,000 in insurance proceeds from our washed out building. It's not much, it's a 60-year-old building. We have some money that we had in the CIP and could, have budgeted for it for our share. I was looking at a legislative budget request potentially of $8 million from the state. We've had indications from Director Guthrie from FDEM. I've spoken with the State Fire Marshal's office. The director there said that she supports our facility. I know you've spoken with your state police and sheriff's agencies. So if we could garner that kind of support, and with our local elected officials, our legislators, pushing that, they do award these appropriations. I was looking through the list, and I've seen $8-10 million appropriations for fire stations pass and be signed by the governor in the budget. So it could happen. Again, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but that's what we're looking at. And it's kind of where we go. I would like to workshop this sooner rather than later, obviously.
Yep.
For the reasons Chief mentioned, and you astutely brought up that it's not cheap to rent beachfront property, even if it is a triple wide trailer. So being the best stewards, I think we should workshop this, figure out where we want it. Prior commission said next door. I've heard there's been some discussion about potentially on the site or near the site on 108th. I think I speak for Chief Barkley. We just need a station at the commission's pleasure where it is. We can buy land elsewhere and put the station. It doesn't matter to us at this point. Centrally located is better. Both sites that we currently own have pros and cons, and we can present that at the soonest.
I think it's important to remember post-storm, I know a lot of you were down here and we were visited by all of our local legislators, and they all want to help us. and this is time we go and say, yeah, this is how we need your help. Myself and the chief, are not, we both have legislative experience up in Tallahassee. If we have to take another trip up there again and go meet with our legislators in person up there before, budget talks and stuff like that goes in the state, we're not doing that. But this is something as a community I think we can ask for, and this is where we can put our power together as a community and start calling in some of these favors.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I see all the police cars that are parked out here, and when are we going to start allowing for the officers to take their vehicles home?
They already do. We're 3 officers down right now, and the rest of it is our fleet cars. We have 3 fleet cars. One of them is going to auction. We're having 2 cars upfitted right now, newer cars, and 2 of those cars are going away. They're going to auction.
Oh, good. Great. Thank you.
And I will say that both chiefs make a great point, which is, the timeframe that was provided was assuming you have the funds. So that's not to say that it can't run parallel, but I mean, just understanding that obviously if you don't have the funding for the project, whether it's a financing, whether it's a legislative grant or other grants or appropriation, you'll be seeking those at the same time before you would award a construction contract.
Yep. And there was one other grant. Stacy had been working on it. I believe it was through State Environmental Protection.
Resiliency.
A resiliency grant.
Resiliency.
It was over $1 million. So.
Oh, that would be nice.
There's mitigation grants from the state and federal government, which, if depending on which site we choose and how we choose to do it, we can upgrade from a standard design to a more resilient design. So there's all kinds of options in there. We just need to make some decisions and move forward on what we want. Generally, to get grant funding and apply for most of these things, you need 30% design. So again, the process of awarding an architect and engineer and all that has to be gone through, so. Yep.
Understand. Great.
I think we'd all agree. I don't think anybody in this room would disagree that the urgency on this is critically important for a lot of the reasons that Chief Barkley mentioned, and to take advantage of the goodwill that we've established with the state and federal elected officials to help us with the funding. That goodwill is going to diminish the further away we get from the hurricanes. So we really need to put this on the front burner.
I would agree with that, Commissioner Dickey.
Ditto.
Thank you.
Okay.
And that would conclude this workshop, unless the commission has any other questions or anything they would like to make of note.
I don't think so.
All right. We are adjourned.